Hello, July here again. In this video, we are going to have a look at the impact that the release of the Desert Treasure quest had on the game. But before we do that, let's first look at the context. Desert Treasure was released on the 18th of April of 2005. Its main reward is access to a new spellbook, and that is what all the fuss was about. So let's have a look at the magic skill first to give you an image of what magic was like at that time. Okay, so the only magic spellbook that existed at that time was the regular spellbook, so the lunar one had not been released yet. The community was still quite heavily PvP focused at that point, and magic in PvP was limited to using the spells that stun or bind players to their spot. Outside of PvP then, training magic in general by using combat was at that time done by making use of the elemental spells because there weren't any better alternatives. The best magic armor that existed was the Mystic Robes, or alternatively the Split Bark Armor, and the best magic weapons were the Battle Staves and the Mystic Staves. So yeah, it wasn't all that great yet, which is why the release of Desert Treasure was so huge. Before we get to the quest rewards, let's talk about the quest itself. Desert Treasure was released in what is historically called the Desert Month, and that's April 2005. The reason why it carries that name is because in April 2005, the Caribbean desert was updated on a weekly basis, and by the end of the month, the size of the desert had doubled. In that sense, Desert Treasure is just one of the expansions that happened. If you want to find out more about this desert month, I have already made a video about it, so I will add a link to it in the video description for when we're done here. Moving on then, the backstory for the quest is quite bizarre because the quest is actually a combination of multiple quests that had originally been designed to be released separately. However, the individual quests weren't good enough, so Jagex decided to merge them into one and the same quest and to create a new story around it. Interesting, right? Before we get to the impact of the quest rewards, let's see what this update meant for the geography of RuneScape. If we look at the new areas that were added to the game on that day, then there is the very dangerous ice path north of the stronghold and the equally dangerous Smoky Well dungeon in the Caribbean desert. However, the most important new place was the pyramid in the Caribbean desert, which is where the rewards are unlocked for completing the quest, and the rewards is what the hype was all about. Keep in mind, this was at a time when Mystic Armor and Battle Staves combined with regular elemental spells were your best option, so how did these quest rewards change that? Well, it's safe to say that the rewards revolutionized magic combat and perhaps even the magic skill in general due to its main reward of unlocking the Ancient Magic spell book. More specifically, one particular spell in that book is the main reason why the quest is on the level of content development. Perhaps the most important quest that has ever been released. I'm sure you know what spell I'm talking about. It's the infamous Ice Barrage spell, which transformed multi-combat. I think most of you have seen these iconic screenshots of a player in Arams wielding an ancient staff and freezing 4 or even more players around him in Castle Wars or in the wilderness. That one magic spell made magic combat much more spectacular, and it truly enriched the highly popular activities that Castle Wars and PvP were at that time. Ancient Magics did not only affect PvP though, also the PvM world discovered the full potential of freezing and attacking multiple monsters at once. For example, a couple of years later, shortly after the release of Summoning in 2008, people would use the Ice Barrage spell to kill rock lobsters in the Waterbird Island dungeon because of their frequent Crimson Charm drops. The spell enabled them to slay multiple lobsters at the same time. Another example, and perhaps a better one, is that for the past 10 years, high-level mages have often resorted to ancient magics to kill the abyssal creatures in the runecrafting abyss. So let's talk about the XP rates now and how those changed. Before the release of Desert Treasure, the best option for XP was to train the skill by using the high-level alchemy spell, which provided around 70k XP per hour, and that was actually already quite high in comparison to other skills. When people discovered the XP rates of the new Ice Barrage or Ice Burst spells, I think you can imagine the magnitude of the hype that it created. Nevertheless, the Ice Barrage XP rates were much lower than they are today though. I heard that training magic by using Ancient Magics gave around 200k XP per hour in the first few years after the release of Ancient Magics. Today, Ice Barrage, and also the lower level variant Ice Burst are still commonly used to train magic because they provide XP rates that are high even for today's standards. And if that is what a quest can do, and then I mean to remain relevant for over a decade, then you just have to conclude that it was one of the most game-changing updates ever. And then we're not even considering the PvP aspect yet, because Ancient Magics gave more color to multi-combat PvP as well. And I'm sure that many veteran players would feel nostalgic if they saw Ancient Magics PvP screenshots. So the two main points to remember from this video is that Desert Treasure not only revolutionized magic combat in general, it also revolutionized multi-combat PvP, and that is why the release of Desert Treasure is a major milestone in the history of the game. That's all for today. Don't forget about my Desert Month video if you're interested in that. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be appreciated. Thank you for watching. I am July, and I hope that you will come back for more.